Today we're going to do a quick review of Law by Mike. I've never seen this channel until recently, and I have not watched the video that we're about to watch. Let's see if Law by Mike has good tips that apply to you. Keep in mind that Mike is a California lawyer, and I'm a Virginia lawyer, so maybe we could call this a coast-to-coast lawyer battle. The title of this video is How to Get Out of Any Ticket in Court 99% of the time. 99% of the time is a bold claim. I do tickets for a living and DUI defense and things like that, and 99% of tickets cannot be beaten. It's just not true. So let's see if there's some truth to what Mike is claiming in his video.
Let's start with what not to do.
I shouldn't have to pay this ticket. I wasn't the only one drag racing.
I wasn't the only one drag racing. So right there, that guy has admitted that he was racing. So just because they didn't pick out the right guy or all the guys doesn't mean you can't be guilty. Let's see what Mike says about it.
Saying the officer selected you out of dozens of other people who committed a crime doesn't absolve you of guilt, and now you've just admitted to the crime. Next.
I agree with Mike's interpretation of that, actually. That basically the officer doesn't have to get everybody. Some judges that I know who love to fish will ask people if they say, well, judge, everybody was speeding around me. And some judges I know will say, well, do you ever go fishing? You can't catch all the fish, right? And that's kind of the same concept.
I didn't mean to commit a crime. I didn't even know that drag racing was illegal.
Wrong.
Here's where I'm confused. The setup he's got here, we got the guy on the witness stand, like the defendant testifying. A, most attorneys are smart enough not to have their client actually testify. B, why is Mike sitting here at, I guess, counsel table heckling his own defendant? It doesn't make sense.
This cop is a liar. He's no good. Look at him.
That's also not a good idea. Unless you have hard evidence to back up your claim, the judge will more than likely side with the cop.
I agree with a couple of these things so far. Just saying the officer's lying isn't going to get you anywhere. This is one reason I have dash cams in all of my vehicles. I think you should have one too. Because a lot of times the officer doesn't have dash camera footage of the actual incident. Fredericksburg City, for example, just wears body cameras, which is good. I'm glad they have them, but they don't have dash cameras. And so the actual driving is normally not captured. What you see on the body camera is the officer's steering wheel as they're driving along. You can't see what's actually happening on the road. So if you want to come in and try to claim that an officer's a liar or has got something wrong, you need to have some actual evidence to back it up. So far, Mike's video is a little cheesy, but I give him some props because he's got some things pretty good so far.
But if the cop that assigned you a ticket is a no-show, then your ticket will likely get dismissed. So we got to make sure your cop doesn't show up for their court date.
Yeah, permanently.
Whoa, not like that.
Aw, I never get to do anything.
Okay, so I guess we were going to have witness tampering, witness kneecapping. I'm not sure. Most officers are going to show up for court, at least in Virginia. I don't know about California where Mike is. Occasionally they don't show up for some reason. And usually if they're not there, it's because they have some type of legitimate excuse, such as a death in the family or they got sick. And if they're not there and they've called ahead, there's some excuse that the court knows about, the case will be continued. Let's see what Mike says and if there's any tricks he has to make sure they don't show up other than kneecapping them.
Your original court date is likely a day your officer will be there for multiple tickets. Simply postpone your date. This will increase the likelihood that the cop won't show up out of inconvenience.
Okay, so let's stop here and talk about just postponing your case. Simply getting a new court date doesn't do the trick, at least in Virginia. In most courts, officers have routine dates where tickets for January, for example, are written for their February court date. And if you get a ticket in January and you're given a February court date where you can't be there because of some other commitment, you can normally move the case once or twice, no problem. However, it'll be moved to their March court date where they'll be there for other tickets. So again, at least in Virginia, that trick really isn't going to help you much.
In some states, you're entitled to a trial by mail. You submit a letter explaining why you're innocent and your cop has a lot more paperwork to do. Officers are less likely to go through the process if it's entirely paperwork.
Okay, so the claim that paperwork is going to turn an officer off is normally not true. Officers live and die by paperwork just like lawyers. So they're used to writing reports, they're used to filling out forms. It's part of their job. Now, Virginia doesn't have a trial by mail concept. So maybe in some courts, maybe that's true. If you sort of burden them with extra paperwork, maybe it will get you there. But it certainly isn't going to work in Virginia.
If a cop gives you a speeding ticket with a radar gun, there's a possibility it wasn't calibrated properly. Radar guns like these need to be calibrated, usually every 30 to 60 days, and in some states, every time after a ticket is issued with them.
This looks like a thermometer. I don't know, maybe it's one of those little sports handheld radar guns, but the radar guns that are used in police cruisers are actually mounted in their cruiser. They have a big display unit that shows the speeds of vehicles. This is some kind of handheld, maybe a toy sports radar type of thing for clocking baseball pitches. So right now we're going to stop and talk about, he's talking about calibration has to be done every 30 to 60 days, maybe in some states, but not in Virginia. The officer does have to check their radar for accuracy before and after each shift, but the actual calibration of the tuning forks, that's done every 6 months. Let's see if Mike even talks about what a tuning fork is.
And they usually must be recalibrated with 2 of these tuning
He
forks.
does!
Tuning forks typically must be used when recalibrating radar guns. Always ask if they were, because if not, you may have an opportunity to argue that your ticket is based on false evidence and should be dismissed.
All right, so here's the problem, Mike. Mike knows what a tuning fork is, but Mike doesn't understand what a calibration is. So let's talk about it. The tuning forks are what you just saw in the video. They're musical tuning forks. They resonate at certain frequencies when they're struck. The tuning forks resonate at certain frequencies. It's an accuracy check device that's used for the radar. So before and after a shift, basically the officer gets in the car to run radar for the day, and he checks the accuracy by banging the tuning fork and making sure that the radar picks up the correct frequency. He does the same thing at the end of his shift to make sure that everything's still working correctly. Now I'll give Mike some benefit of the doubt. I don't know what the standard is in California or maybe some other states, but in Virginia, the tuning fork calibrations are what have to be redone every 6 months. Because they're musical tuning forks. They're chunks of metal, as you see. They need to be rechecked to make sure that they're working properly, that they're resonating at the correct frequency. It's easy to misunderstand the process, but the tuning forks are used every day to check the accuracy of the radar, and the tuning forks are what gets calibrated every 6 months.
How would you even know if the radar guns were calibrated or not?
Excellent question. What you need is a discovery request. This will allow you to get access to the officer's notes, radar gun instruction manuals, and calibration records.
Virginia operates on a trial by ambush situation. And so the best way to catch an officer off guard with his calibrations is to show up to court, and when your case is called or right before your case is called, ask the officer to see his calibrations. Sometimes they won't have them. Sometimes they'll realize, oh yeah, I've got them right here. And I inspect those calibrations and I realize this is out of date. And the officer doesn't even realize that they were out of date until a savvy attorney like myself points it out. So filing discovery requests and giving him time to get the proper paperwork is, in my opinion, the wrong approach.
You must send a specific written request via certified mail to the police department and local prosecutor.
Okay, that's not going to work. In Virginia, that's not a thing. For discovery, you're only entitled to discovery by motion. You can't just send a certified letter asking for certain records. And all you're entitled to in Virginia is your own criminal record, any statements you made to the officer, and any exculpatory evidence, which means evidence that tends to prove you're innocent. Just sending some letter to the prosecutor and to the officer is not going to get you discovery in Virginia. And it looks like now he's going to tell us to contact the clerk of court for advice or for instructions. The clerk of court can't give you legal advice. This is why you need a good attorney.
For more information on what forms you'll need and how to make your discovery request, contact your local clerk at your court's office and they'll give you what you need. You want to ask for description of the device used, serial number, and date of last calibration, the instruction manual for said device, distance between the officer with the radar gun and the vehicle, any other records related to the radar gun, and the officer's name. Thanks a bunch.
Okay, so a clerk at a court cannot, well, at least in Virginia, should not tell you all that and cannot tell you all that. They can't give you legal advice. They can't tell you all the things that you're supposed to look for. They can give you a form if there's a form, but there's not a form for discovery in Virginia, at least. Maybe in California, maybe in other states, but not in Virginia.
Don't forget to use this catch-all in your request. All other relevant documents and other evidence in the government's possession.
Oh, that's magic. All other stuff. No.
If you knew you weren't speeding, you can use all this information to build your defense. Hopefully this request will dismiss a ticket, but if not, this information will be very helpful with tip number 3.
What? So wait. All you do is you file this complicated, bogus in Virginia discovery request, and your ticket will be dismissed because you asked for information. False.
So you moved the trial date. You requested discovery, but you're still going to court.
Yes,
Here's
you
what
are.
you do to fight it to the very end. It's time to challenge the officer.
What? Oh, challenge the officer. They get challenged every day. Let's see what Mike says here.
Don't worry, I'll coach you. You're going to want to raise doubt about the government's evidence against you.
If you're going to cross-examine an officer, you have to be prepared. You must research the law regarding your alleged traffic violation.
I actually kind of like Mike's video production. He's doing a really good job of keeping it entertaining, and they put a lot of work into this video, obviously. But this stuff is it's just wrong. Yes, you need to know the law, but you as a layperson, no offense, it's going to be hard to understand how the law applies to your case. You could get online, you could look up some cases, you could look up the statutes, but unless you do this every day, you don't understand how it all applies and how it all works together. It's sort of like you can go online if you're sick and you can read something about what symptoms you have and what illnesses you may have, but most people, if they're really sick, they still go to a doctor because they understand a doctor has expertise and understands the big picture and all the fine details as well.
He hasn't responded because it's not lupus.
Oh my.
Can you tell the court exactly where you were when you saw my alleged traffic violation?
Yeah, I was in the car ahead of you. I saw it in my rear view.
So is it possible that your attention would have been on the road ahead of you, making you unable to draw a conclusion on the cars behind you?
Yeah, well...
No. Any officer who has taken the time to write you a ticket claiming that he believes you violated XYZ law, he's not going to admit to that on the stand. He's not going to say, oh yeah, you got me. He's going to say, yes, you were behind me, but I was watching you because you caught my attention for whatever reason. And so I was focused on you. There was nobody ahead of me that was at danger, and I saw you do the offense. Their credibility is on the line. They don't want to look stupid. They're not going to admit to something like that easily, at least on cross-examination.
I'm Law by Mike. Remember to like and subscribe for more legal tips.
I got nothing more, folks. 99% of tickets aren't going to get dismissed with Mike's tips here. If you want to represent yourself, find out when the traffic cases are heard in your local court where your ticket is. Go there maybe a couple weeks ahead of time and observe the dockets. See what the judge is doing. See how things work. And then decide, hey, this judge looks pretty reasonable and I think I'll be okay by myself. Or maybe I should get an attorney. If you fought your own traffic ticket in court and you have some tips for the community about what worked for you or what didn't work, drop a comment down below and let's talk about it.